You're listening to the Elvis Ultimate Fan Channel podcast, the channel that is devoted 100% to the life and career of the biggest selling recording artist of all time, with your host, Steve Francis.
Hi everyone, welcome once again to Elvis the Ultimate Fan Channel. Ann Moses was editor at Tiger Beat magazine from 1966 to 1972. The magazine grew to be the hottest teen magazine in the US. She became an instant Elvis fan on seeing him for the first time on the Ed Sullivan Show in 1956. She sat on the edge of the stage during taping of Elvis' 1968 NBC TV Special. She toured Elvis' and Colonel Parker's offices and attended Elvis' opening show on July 31st, 1969 at the International Hotel, Las Vegas. Ann then had the ultimate experience of meeting Elvis at the press conference that followed the show. I'm delighted to say Ann joins me on the show to tell me more. Hi Ann, and welcome to the show.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I suppose the first thing I could ask you to share with our listeners is where you were born and where you grew up.
Oh, okay. I was born in Long Beach, California, and when I was 10 years old, my dad moved us, 20 miles south to Anaheim, California. And most people recognize that name because about 6 months after we moved into our brand new house, which they had cleared the orange groves to build, it was announced in the local paper that Walt Disney was building an amusement park 2 miles down from us. So we kind of watched Disneyland go up from the scratch, and then I got to work there as a teenager. It was really awesome.
You've actually got a story about working at Disneyland, a very fascinating story, actually, if you can share that with us.
I do. I had gone in at 7 one day. The park opened at 8, and I was called lead counter girl because I worked at Sunkissed, I presume, which was we sold orange juice and lemonade, freshly made, and there was a, fun orange squeezing machine that was always going. And so occasionally, while I was setting up and getting everything ready for the day, other employees that were at work would come over for a cup of coffee. But all of a sudden, we were directly across from the Jungle Cruise ride. And so all of a sudden, these men walk up to the counter, and it's two supervisors who I was familiar with and Walt Disney.
Wow, Walt himself.
I was, yes. And the thing is, I totally remembered when you go to work at Disneyland, you have to go to Disneyland University, and it's a 3-day course, and they teach you about his philosophy. We never called the people that came into the park customers; they were guests, and then the key thing was that Walt Disney believed that Disneyland should always be a first name organization. So you called everyone by their first name, whether it was the top supervisor to the lowliest. There were no low jobs at Disneyland. Even the street sweepers were paid well. But you called everybody by their first name. So in those classes, they told you, if you meet Walt Disney, you don't call him Mr. Disney. You called him Walt or Uncle Walt. So I was, of course, kind of nervous, but I said, "Good morning, Uncle Walt. What can I get for you?" And he ordered a glass of orange juice. And then I was so excited that he was there. I had written 2 articles for the employee newsletter. So I said, I wrote 2 articles for the employee newsletter. I was telling him very proudly.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, you're a writer." And I didn't say too much, and then he said, well, maybe that will be what you're going to do in the future. He was just the sweetest man. It was like your grandfather talking to you when you talked to him. He was just interested, and there was just something magical about the person.
And just before he left, he said something to you, didn't he? Which became your mantra. He said to you, well, keep it up, Anne.
That's it. That's it. And it was like, at the time, I just thought, man, he's being so nice. But I had no idea at that point that it would be going anywhere. I was working on my college newspaper, but, it seemed like a pretty big dream. And so that then it just came full circle when I started working at Tiger Beat, when I started writing for New Musical Express.
Yeah.
It was just like, this is just a dream come true.
You started working for Tiger Beat in 1966.
Right. And I was in my second semester of my second year of college, and I had kind of talked to my marketing class teacher into letting me do this internship. And so I was going up there and working 20 hours a week, and I was getting credit in my marketing class. I had to write a thesis at the end, but so it 3 days a week I was driving up there and spending the day, and all of a sudden, here I'd been just going to my local community college and, still living with my parents and everything. And all of a sudden I was driving up to Hollywood and just going, out on interviews in Hollywood and going to clubs. And it was, I don't know, it's like my life turned upside down in just a moment. My publisher had sent me on tour with Dino, Dizzy, and Billy and Paul Revere and the Raiders. And it was like, I can't leave this right now. So college just went by the wayside, and I got a totally different type of education over the next few years. It was, which was, 99% fun mixed in with a good job. And, I was learning things all the time. Mm-hmm. So it was good times.
And then you got a call one day in 1968. Now, you were an Elvis fan from the early days, is that correct?
Yes, of course. When he first came on Ed Sullivan, my family watched the Ed Sullivan show every Sunday. It came on at 6:00 at night. And so that was the night that we didn't sit around the family dining room table. We had TV trays, and it was the one day my mom didn't cook home-cooked meals. We either got pizza, and she would make a salad, or we would have Pink's Hamburgers. There was a hamburger joint just a mile down the road, and my dad would go and get burgers and fries, and so that was kind of our family thing, that we'd sit and watch Ed Sullivan. We'd eat our, special to us dinner. And then the night that Elvis came on, it was just my brother and I, because my brother was 18 months older. And we were both just, this guy is the coolest thing ever. I somehow managed to go out and buy Don't Be Cruel. So I was definitely one of those early Elvis fans, asking my parents for an Elvis skirt for Christmas, but I didn't get it because my mom made all my clothes. And it was like, they just, they weren't going to buy me a store-bought skirt. But then as soon as I was so busy with junior high school and going into high school, and then when all of us in high school heard that first Beatles record, it's like Elvis just really fell by the wayside. I mean, the whole world was kind of agog over the Beatles and the British invasion. And I was certainly part of that mob because it was just so new, so exciting. And not that Elvis was, not the incredible star he was, but, when he came back from the army and he started making movies, I just didn't have any interest because I thought they were pretty corny. But all that did change in 1968.
Yeah, well,
correct.
Tell me, you must have been thrilled to get this telephone call in 1968. If you'd like to tell our listeners about that.
Well, the thing is, I had made a contact because, I learned very early on in Hollywood that you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. So when a publicist would call and say, "Oh, I've got this new group, would you come interview them?" Trying to get them publicity, trying to get them in Tiger Beat, it would be like, if I was familiar with that publicist and I wanted to, keep that nice rapport going, I'd go, yeah, sure. And so this is what happened with Graylin Landon, who was head of publicity for RCA Records. And he had tried to get me interested in Elvis again, basically. He said, I think you'd find it really interesting if you'd go out to MGM Studios and see Elvis's office. So it was like, okay, I'll do that for you, And of course I went, and what I found was, I was like, oh, this is a favor. I'm not really that interested. But you walk into Elvis's office, and I had never, ever been in a place like that. It was like a 3-room office, kind of a big main office, and every square inch of the entire place, the walls, the floor, the ceiling, were all Elvis. They had basically been wallpapered in every publicity photo, movie poster. It just, there wasn't one square inch that was bare. And it was just, it was like a natural wonder, you're just looking around, you're going, this is so incredible. And so Graylin continued to send me, whenever a new movie would be released, he would send me tickets. And I really wasn't interested in going, so I gave them to my close friend, who was a big Elvis fan. And then the other bit of rapport that I gained with Graylin, who was just a really nice young man, he said, "Oh, I'd like you to do me a favor." And he said, "I'd like you to come meet this new artist that we have." And he introduced me to Harry Nilsson. And, I just enjoyed talking with Harry so much. He was so different. He was the last thing you'd think of as a pop star or a singing star or anything else. He had been a banker, he had been married, and he was, a few years older than I was. But he was just such an interesting person to talk to. So, Graylin appreciated me starting to write about Harry. And then he did call me and he said, "I have some tickets to a show and you need to go to it." And he really didn't elaborate. He wasn't going to give away, what this was about or anything else. And I just said, okay, if, I'm taking your word for it. And then when I get there, I get over to Burbank Studios and I'm in line to see Elvis live, and they were taping the comeback special. And of course, I didn't know what to expect from the outside. They lead us in, and there were only, I'd say, probably 100 people at most because there was a small area of like grandstands beside that little square stage that everybody's familiar with. And I got led to my seat, and I ended up in the top to the last row. And I took my friend that was a crazy Elvis fan, and his name was Tony. And so we sat down, and we're both kind of agog, it's like, oh, what's going to happen? And isn't this so cool? And you were really aware of how intimate the setting was. And so then toward the end, before they had started the show, in comes Priscilla Presley. And of course, I had only seen pictures of her with her beehive hairdo and everything. Well, this was the new woman, and she had her hair down, and it was long and not straight like was really popular with all the hippies at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but just these soft little curls. And oh my, she was so stunning. So she sat directly behind us, and her knees were actually bumping into Tony's back, and he was just kind of elbowing me, going, I can't believe it. This is, Priscilla Presley's knees are in my back. And, we honestly, we thought that, he had already reached the pinnacle of how great that evening could be.
Yeah.
But then I think they showed a clip of from the show while we were waiting for Elvis to come out. But then they introduced Elvis, and, well, not yet. First, they said, okay, we're filming this segment down on this little, I don't know, it was probably 10-foot square little platform. And they introduced him, and out he came in black leather head to toe. And, he was so slim then. And it was like sex on a stick. You were just going, I can't believe it.
Yeah. I can imagine.
And then they asked people they chose people. They said, we want people sitting on the stage, because there were 2 steps up to the little platform. So there were 2 rows that people could sit. And lo and behold, as the guy is coming up the stairs and pointing to different people, he chose me. And I'm just going, no way, I can't believe it. And there I am down on the stage. And when Elvis came out and started singing those songs, the standing up ones, the ones where he's sitting down with the guys, I was like 5 feet away, and it was like nothing I'd ever experienced, because, it was exciting to meet all these pop stars and stuff, but it was instant that you got that this was Elvis Presley, looking better than he had ever been in his entire life. And the first time he began to sing, it was just so overwhelming, because that amazing voice from a few feet away, it was perfect. His voice was just perfect. And I was kind of like in a trance the whole time. And because I was, down there on the stage, and then the real kicker was when it came on TV, I saw myself in the video. And I couldn't even believe it. And the best thing was when he sang my favorite song of his in the whole wide world, Can't Help Falling in Love. And that was the final number of the show. The film editors cut me in and superimposed Elvis singing with me looking up at him. So I have some shots of the TV screen of me and Elvis, with him superimposed, next to me. And it's like, I couldn't even believe that I was captured as part of that iconic show.
So if anybody wants to check out this particular part, it's when he's singing Can't Help Falling in Love. You are shown alongside Elvis on the lap dissolve, sort of the mix on the screen.
Yes. And it's just, that's one of the pictures I will send you.
Okay.
And it was, but I mean, who would have expected that after this amazing night of watching the filming, and it went on for several hours. And then to end up in the finished product, it was mind blowing. And recently I've been in contact with a very nice young man in the UK. I can't remember what town he lives in, but we have corresponded, and he sent me pictures of he and his wife. They've come over to the United States, but he recently, I don't know if he got the DVD or if it was shown on TV over in the UK, the comeback special.
Oh yes, we do.
And he sent me new screenshots, and I'll share those with you because they are shots that I never was able to capture when it was on TV, and they're other shots of me with Elvis in the shot, and they're just, I mean, all these years later, and I'm seeing something new. It's really something.
Well, it actually gets better than that, doesn't it? Because if we were to fast forward, another 14 months till the end of July 1969. Now, you were on your honeymoon in July 1969. Is that correct?
Well, so to speak. I had gotten married the Saturday before. I think it was July 26th. But we had decided. We knew, the thing is that in June I had received, now you're sparking my memory. In June, I had received a letter from the head of public relations at the International Hotel, and it was inviting me and a guest to the opening of Elvis's first live appearance in 10 years. And so we said, that's going to be our honeymoon. And so I think it was a Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, but August 1st, 1969. And we, the place was just electric because everybody there, I don't even know how they gathered the whole audience for that first show. But I remember Cary Grant was there. And, there were lots of celebs, but we were like everybody else, kind of waiting in line to go through the front doors. And the maitre d' seated me right down front, one of the seats right at the stage. And I mean, I was going, what's happening? I can't believe this. And there I am, and saw that show was like nothing else I've ever seen in my life. This was not the Elvis of the Gold LeMay days and the young, the young boy that was, breaking girls' hearts. It was this man. I mean, I think Elvis was only in his very early 30s at that point in time. And even though all the hippies might have been saying, don't trust anyone over 30, and in general, we thought 30 was really old, there was nothing old about Elvis. I mean, he was so stunning. And that night he wore his all black outfit. And I think that the next night it would be his white one. But anyway, he commanded the stage. Everybody there just couldn't believe it. And no one had ever seen anything like it, because you can't duplicate Elvis as a singer. And this was a new Elvis in the way of performing, the way he was doing karate kicks, and what I didn't expect is the way he would joke with the audience.
Yeah.
You know, he would say things like, well, you might remember this one. And then he'd go, one for the money, two for the show.
He always had a great rapport with the audience.
Oh, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal. And I just, it hadn't been that intense I'd seen a number of shows by then, the Rolling Stones. I'd photographed, Mick Jagger from 2 feet away. And I'd seen the Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl and everything. But the Elvis is just an entity all to his own. There's no one that compares. There's no one that did what he did in the way of embracing the audience and just being able to hear that voice live was like nothing else I'd experienced.
Yeah. Now you were working for the New Musical Express at the time, where you were sending articles about Elvis over to the New Musical Express in England. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was part of my, working my way into Elvis's world, through Graylin, is that he would often let me know different things so I could send news over, because, Elvis had never appeared over there. And, he has so many fans worldwide that, I just saw, oh, well, this is a good way to make money, sending over articles and being paid for them. I mean, not bad. But it was also, it was an outlet to really write what I was feeling, because I kind of felt like, Tiger Beat did print some of my stories because it was easy. They were already done and they had the content. But Tiger Beat was a teen fan magazine, and Elvis didn't exactly fit that mold. But at the same time, because of me, there were articles on Elvis and Tiger Beat. And it turns out they were appreciated. But just before the show was about to end, Graylin came over to my chair and said, there's a press conference after the show, and they hadn't told anybody this. And he said, so get right over to room right after the show. So when the show did end and everybody was, it's not like they were in a rush to get out of there. Everybody was kind of stunned, and they were just hanging out and conversing and sharing the emotions. That's what was going on within the whole showroom, which I'd never seen that dynamic before either. But I made my way out the door. I made my way, got in the front row of the press conference. And so then Elvis comes walking in with his dad, with the Colonel, and he was so at ease. It was just, it was like in his mind, it's like, I killed it. I knocked it out of the park, and there was no humble Southern boy. You could tell he was really proud of what he had done. And so he answered questions and really gave us some insight, because nobody sat down and interviewed Elvis. It just didn't happen. So that you would get this bit of insight. And again, throughout the press conference, he was making jokes, and you just got to see another side of him. So so at the end of the press conference, they just said, if you'd like to have a picture with Elvis, get in line. Well, I was in the front row, so needless to say, my husband and I, we got right in line. And then there's, a handful of pictures of me with Elvis. One, I'm looking up at him like, oh, you're a god.
Yes. I'm familiar with that picture. You're kind of gazing up at him, and
Yeah.
he's looking off to his left, and it's a very delightful
Oh,
picture. I must say.
yes.
Do you remember what Elvis said to you? Can you remember what he said to you that night?
I believe I said your show was amazing or something, and he said, thank you very much. And that was about it, because there were a line of people. So there was a handful of words spoken, and that was it. But just knowing that I was going to have that memory picture, and of course one turned out really good, where I'm not looking at him like a fangirl. I'm just looking up with admiration. And I mean, it's just been, that was captured was really great. And then directly after that, I had to go up to the room and write my story and send it airmail first thing the next morning to the UK. So I was up till all hours.
Now, a lot of people have we've seen transcripts of the press conference, but we've never heard audio recordings. And we're all led to believe that nobody actually had a tape recorder in that room during the press conference that evening, which is kind of strange.
Yes, but I certainly didn't. And but I took furious notes, and I wrote it up. I can't remember what I did for the NME, but I know in Tiger Beat I wrote it up as an interview.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's cheating, but it was like I wanted, because he was that candid during the interview that I just put it in that format. But I'm pretty sure I covered most of the topics and describing his demeanor and everything.
Yeah.
Then we get to the next morning, and of course it was kind of like after seeing the Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl. I mean, my teenage self said, I've got to meet these guys. And it was like, oh, if only I could take pictures. That would just be so amazing, because of course no cameras were allowed. And I think there are very few of that first night's shows. So he had two shows the next night, as he would go on and do an 8:00 show and a midnight show that was cocktails only. And so I went to the publicist's office, and I said, I would just really like to get pictures. Is there any way, you allowed me to do that? And he said, well, I'll let you go up in the balcony for the 12:00 show, and you can shoot pictures. And I thought, oh, this is the ticket. So I'm calling all over Las Vegas, and of course it's 115 or 116 outside. And certainly my car didn't have air conditioning in those days. In fact, I was driving a Volkswagen Beetle at the time. And I found, I had taken my Nikon camera with me, but I certainly didn't have a super long lens. So I found a store that had a 200 millimeter lens. I rented it. We went to that late show. I mean, first we went to Ike and Tina Turner in the lounge, because it was free to see Ike and Tina Turner and the Ikettes, if you can imagine. You just had to buy 2 drinks.
Yeah.
And then, so then we went to the 12:00 show, and he wore a white jumpsuit that night. And I shot pictures from the balcony. And, they're through the long lens. I was balancing on the edge. But I got some, what to me were some really great pictures. And the problem was, I had to take the film to be developed, because I shot color slides. And it was like well, I shot these with a 200 millimeter lens. It was probably this distance, and they had to figure out how to develop the film to make sure I was getting the most out of them.
Yeah.
So after giving them all the descriptions, and this was, a Hollywood film lab that did things for studios, and luckily they turned out great. And so I still have those to this day.
I would love to see those. I really would.
Yeah. They're like 60 slides, and I've sold a handful of those to when they've been doing different live albums of Elvis from other performances and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty much they're just my little treasure.
Yeah.
And so it was one cherry after another on top of the sundae. It just got better and better.
That's all for now. Thanks to Anne for joining me on the show today. Coming up in the next part, more cherries on the top of the sundae as Anne tells me more Elvis stories, including her appearance in the 1970 documentary movie Elvis, That's the Way It Is, and getting kissed by him during one of his live shows. I hope you can join me next time for another episode from Elvis the Ultimate Fan Channel.